probably be disappointed I only have one. She would have them all over, fully prepared for everything. There's, if you point out errors, she's not always fine with that. But I'm sure when Courtney walked in and she saw that, she's probably like, man, I'm not ready for it either. That hasn't even been placed in my room yet. I don't know where to put it. I'm extremely behind. So for those that don't know me, my name is Brandon Bowman. Nicole's Nicole's my sister. Who knows? Nicole's my brother, Nicole's my sister. Lance just figured that out. I have been raised in the church. I went to First Baptist in Reed City for a long time. And I've always been around the church, heard a lot of the stories, obviously, but I don't feel like I really embraced them like I should have. So when Lance asked me, or actually jokingly, we talked about it, and then he signed me up for today. I was kind of joking at first, and I said, sure, we'll give it a shot. He asked me, or I asked him, like, what do you want me to talk about? Or, like, how do you want me to do this? Because, again, I'm not him. I don't have all that knowledge. The schooling he probably went through. He said, I don't know, you can just talk, you can, make it into a testimony, you can, just talk about Reed Church. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, I guess. So I'm going to kind of mix this into a testimony a little bit. But I guess when I was a kid, I thought a testimony was like when you first became a Christian and all that. This is more so a testimony of what I see Reed Church and other churches should really be. When I left Dighton, and there's, when I went to Dighton, and this isn't Dighton's fault, this is my fault. I was just sitting in the church, I didn't really do anything. I felt like I was kind of just a dud over there, and that's my fault. That's nobody else's fault. I didn't feel like I was doing much for my family. I didn't feel like I was doing much for anybody, and I certainly wasn't doing anything to expand the kingdom. So when Reed Church came up, I'm like, you know what, maybe this is what I need, mainly for my kids and my wife, but also for me, just to see if I can do something better and maybe become something or more helpful and also guide my kids as well. So this is kind of a testimony, but I'm also going to put a little spin on it to connect it to teaching because that's what I'm comfortable with. So that's a little bit of that background. So this message is something that I feel is super important, and really it's a message that for me is something that I have connected to. I feel like I'm just like everybody else. Sometimes I'm a simple person, and today's message is going to be very, very simple. Just something that I went on a motorcycle ride with Lance, and this is all I could think about the whole time. I don't sleep when I have something on my mind. So last night I didn't sleep. It wasn't because of all the painting we did. So we'll see how it goes today. But talking about teaching, Courtney again. Courtney knows that one of my favorite things in the classroom, again, she spends a lot of time with me, or pretty much any teacher, we like simple things. So for me, some of my favorite things are sticky notes. And kids love sticky notes. We had another literacy coach called Tracy McDougall. You never met her, but she was obsessed with sticky notes. So she's the one that got me on this. But sticky notes are things that everybody loves. Kids love because they're different colors. They love to write their thoughts. Half the time, if it's second grade, you don't understand anything that it says. Usually, if I can't read it, I just kind of either make something up or I put it off to the side as if I read it. Or I'll say, you know what, that one is just like somebody else's thought. That way they all feel appreciated. But the thing about sticky notes is kids just love writing on it. Adults might not like writing on them as much. We'll find that out here in a second. But like you can take a sticky note, you can put it on their forehead, and then you've made their day, and they want to be the next kid to get the sticky notes. So I love sticky notes. Anchor charts I'm not a massive fan of because it takes too much prep. Last year I had Brandon do the anchor charts for me. That was really nice. You can tell when Brandon made one versus when I made one. But I love using anchor charts at times, sticky notes, and then my posters. And then most importantly, when I was a kid and I would read, I enjoyed reading, I think, but I didn't really do much with the reading. I was a good reader, I would read it, move on, and that's it. What I realized through teaching is that we can do so much more with reading, and that's where this poster is going to come in a second. So I love being able to teach second graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, sometimes parapros, the value of in-depth reading and looking at different strategies on how to be more fluent, understand things better in reading. So we're going to talk about that today as well. So I'm going to pass out a sticky note here in a second, or a sticky note pad. You do not have to feel obligated to put anything on the sticky note. Especially early on in the year, I will tell kids if you want to write something, you can. If you want to just have it in your head, that's okay too. You're not going to share your sticky note. This is just for you to reflect on throughout the time. So there should be pens at everybody's desk or table. Yes, there we go. It should be there. So I'm going to pass out a sticky note. Don't do anything with it yet. And again, while it's there, don't worry if you don't want to do anything with the sticky notes. Okay? You're not? That's okay. You're used to sticky notes. I told you I use them a lot. Usually kids will fight over colors too, but Wes and I usually just chuck them. So that's the color you get. That's same color. Pink? Okay. All right. So we're going to use those sticky notes here in a second to think about a story. So as I said, teaching, what I realize is there are things in the Bible that are very similar to what I do in the classroom. In the classroom, we read like myths, folk tales, fables, all that good stuff. And the design of those things is for kids to learn a message or a moral. And my favorite reason why, or the reason why I like teaching those things is because any kid, no matter their reading level, can pull something out of a story like that nobody else thought of. So it's really easy as a teacher to make a kid really embrace reading and feel good about reading just by saying, man, that's an awesome lesson. I didn't even think about that. Because no matter what story you read, there's lots of lessons that you can pull from that. And I realize that in the Bible, Jesus does the same thing. He talks about, or he will share parables with people. And really, parables are the same concept where he is sharing a story that is designed to teach some sort of principle or moral or spiritual lesson that Jesus wants somebody to understand. So before I get too much into the message I want to talk about, all I'm going to say is the Good Samaritan. That is a story that I'm sure everybody knows, and even if you haven't read it, you've at least heard about it, because you'll hear people everywhere talk about, oh, that was a Good Samaritan. Thank you for doing that. So before I talk about the Good Samaritan, all I want you to do is take your pen, one sticky note. If you don't want to do it, you just put it in your head, that's okay. I want you to write something that you think of when it comes to the Good Samaritan. Anything at all. I'll give you about 2 minutes. Is that long enough? Too long? That's a long time. Well, then this lesson's for you. That's what my plans are. I'm following the plans. The camera's recording for Lance. I'm sure the camera currently sees nobody except me, so just to tell the camera there's cameras there. So we got some tables, because the camera only sees this table and me. It looks like I'm talking to nobody. That was in one of my dreams too, so that's all right. All right, we'll go about 1 more minute. It's just too long. There's always a kid, Andy, that is doodling. And I'm always going around like, hey, buddy, that's not what I was asking for. Or I said, Good Samaritan. I didn't talk about basketball today, so please don't worry anything about that. And there's also somebody raising their hand. Before we go to the bathroom. No, we just had bathroom break too there. Non-stop. Right? And if somebody asks questions, like, hey, can they go? No. He went, they're good. They're good. All right. I'm pretty sure most of you have your thought. If you don't have your thought, you can keep adding to it. You can keep adding to it if it's something that is, you don't have to feel like you need to share it. When you go home today, you can reflect on it with your family. At the end of it, I'm hoping you do reflect on it, and hopefully you learn something today. So when it comes to the Good Samaritan story, I guess when I was growing up, that was a story that stuck out to me, mostly because I was sitting in the church and listened to it all the time. We went to the Bible school, and I remember thinking, this story doesn't make any sense to me, because who in their right mind is going to leave somebody like that? Right? I'm sure everybody in this room, if you see somebody that is hurt and in bad shape, which I'll read the story in a second, you're not gonna leave them. So in my mind, I heard this story, and I'm like, this isn't for me, because I already know to help those people. End of the story. But then I realized, especially, and maybe this is bad, but as I got older, especially teaching, when that story came into my mind, I'm like, man, I'm doing exactly the opposite of what I teach my second graders, which is pretty pathetic. When we teach second graders or anybody, we're teaching them to think deep. So a lot of times in the beginning of the year, I will show a picture, and believe it or not, it's hard to find the right picture for this, of a beach. I wanted to find a picture of a beach with different water levels. I usually draw it, but nobody here wants to see me draw. But usually I'll draw a picture of a beach where like kids will play. We'll have a little bit of water here where they'll play, and then we'll go deeper and deeper. And I'll explain that when we read or when we're listening to a lesson or anything to do with school or anything outside of school, I guess, we're trying to get our thoughts to be more on the deeper end. I'll bring up the word shallow. Most kids don't know what shallow is, but I like to talk about it anyway. And kids will learn that shallow means we're not going in very deep. So shallow thinking is just obvious thinking. Like I tell them, if we're reading the story, I don't really care that we have a boy and a girl in the story. I want to know more about those characters, like how are they responding to events happening in their lives, things like that. So most of us are very shallow thinkers when it comes to stories. I'm one of the worst ones, and that's what I noticed with the Good Samaritan story. So the first thing I'll do is I'll have kids, similar to what you did, except I'm not going to do this, I'll have them read their sticky notes if they want to, and then I will point out the deep thinking sticky notes. I won't take the shallow thoughts, because that's not very nice to tell somebody, hey, that's shallow. But I'll take a note, like, man, that is a super deep thought. I love that one. And I'll take it, and I'll go to the deep end, and I'll stick it there. You've made the kid's day. Now they're embracing the read. So I love getting a kid to think deep. And again, when it came to me, I realized I'm always on the shallow end with these stories. If I wrote a note on this, or wrote a sticky note on the Good Samaritan, like I said, it would have been something like, help the person, that's it. I would have been done with that story. The lesson doesn't mean anything to me. But I realized, again, I'm just thinking shallow. So I'm hoping today that we are working on the deep end of thinking. And maybe your sticky note has something on there that is deep. At the end of the lesson or message, I guess, hopefully you'll look at it and be like, man, I'm all right. I'm like in the middle of the path, but I need to think a little bit deeper. Or maybe you're like me, you're like, wow, I really didn't think much of that. So today, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to read the Good Samaritan, and I'm going to talk about a few things that I feel like I've learned from it a couple times, or recently. One of them, I think, came from Pastor Jim. I actually don't remember which pastor talked about it. But my second point is the thing that I feel like goes the best with re-church, or really any church again, or outside of church, because it's not about getting people in here. It's about leading people out where they're struggling, and that's where my main point is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to the story, and we'll read it. Usually, if this was a classroom, we would all read it. Runner probably doesn't want to do that, so we won't do that. So this is from Luke 10, verse 25 through 37, the parable of the Good Samaritan. It says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And this is obviously where the Good Samaritan story comes in. It says, in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened, actually, Nikki, your daughter, when I read this story through my book, this is where she really got upset, just to let you know. It's funny to listen to second graders because they get like, whoa, why would somebody do that? I thought that was kind of cool. So when I read this part, I think of your daughter. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place, he saw him pass by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. That's pretty much where I stopped reading the story when I was a kid. I'm like, oh, yep, you got to help somebody. Easy, when we're done with the story. This is kind of where I got to the shallow thinking. It says, he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii. I had to look up that word last night, so if Google's wrong, I'm wrong, but that's how they said to say it. Out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. So again, if you're like me, when I first read that story, it seemed ridiculous because it seems too obvious. You're not going to see somebody on the street that is looking like that and you're just going to leave them. Now granted, there are people in the world that would actually do that. But I'm sure nobody here, anybody you know, is going to do that. So again, in my mind, I'm like, well, that story is done because it's too easy. I think in today's society, a lot of us, there are people out there that would help, but how far are they taking that? And that's where my first point and where my vocab words come in that I like to tell my second graders. Because a lot of people in today's world are going to help that person. They might even take out their camera or wait till people see them on camera and make it more obvious that they're helping this person. So I think the first point that I want to mention, and again, I think this came from Pastor Jim, may have came from somebody else, is that when this man takes pity on him, he didn't just help the guy and move on. He could have sent him to somebody else. He could have done anything else. But what I really like is he went to him, bandaged his wounds, poured out oil and wine, put the man on his donkey, brought him into an inn, took care of him, and he had to have taken care of him that night because it says the next day. So he's already been there a long time. To me, that's a huge piece because he could have been very short and sweet. Gotcha, here, you come help me instead. I got stuff to do. So to me, that is a super big deal. It tells me that he really cares. He's showing compassion because at some point that was probably inconvenient for this guy. It had to be somewhat inconvenient because I'm sure he had stuff to do. So he did this, took care of the man all day, and then he went above and beyond by saying on the next day, taking out his money, giving it to the innkeeper, asking him to look after him, and said, I'll reimburse you for anything that you have to say, just to make sure that that guy gets the absolute best care and love that he can provide, which is really cool. So when I teach second grade, there's a word that kind of goes with this that I love to use with second graders. Actually, there's two of them. So on my shirt, and again, this won't be very pretty. This room's not set up. I'll try to write big. My handwriting kind of stinks. And I also don't know which marker is good because Brandon uses a lot of them. So this might be very colorful. But my first point that I want to say, the first thing that I want to take from the story are two of my favorite words. The first one is yep, there's the purple. That one's going out, Brandon. Don't throw that one back, baby. Be intentional. And then also I'm going to put be selfless. This is really the same point that I want together. These are probably the two biggest words I use in the classroom. That word intentional is going to be brought up right away on Thursday, first day of school, which I thought about 2 weeks ago was the following Monday. So, yeah, it's coming up pretty quick. But I love the word intentional because a lot of kids, a lot of adults, when we do something, it's like half effort. We're not giving our best effort. It's like, oh, that's good enough. I found that when you're working on like rentals and things, people are like, oh, that's good enough. And then when we're working on our house, we're like, no, that's not good enough. I would like it to look a little bit better. Being intentional. A lot of us can be successful with what we do, but can we really expand on what we do? So intentional to me is doing your absolute best, no matter how hard or challenging it is. Sometimes that involves working with somebody else, asking somebody else for help. This man, the Samaritan, was extremely intentional. He didn't just help the guy, he went above and beyond. He wanted to give him his best effort, which in my belief means that he was showing him that compassion, that love, that grace, which ultimately will lead, hopefully, to the grace from God. My second word is selfless. I love that word. I don't know why that word didn't really pop up for me as a kid. I don't know if we just weren't very educated with that word. I don't know. Almost everybody will say unselfish. I don't know if you guys hear the same thing, but you're either selfish or you're unselfish, which obviously means the opposite of it. But that word selfless is really cool. And almost every second grader or kid I work with will talk about the word selfless. We'll talk about character traits, and selfless comes up all the time. We'll talk about how that word selfless, the word less means without, and obviously without self. Usually by now a second grader would raise their hand and say, Mr. Bowman, is that like the word careless, without care, like you? That's usually what a kid would say to me, which is cool. I embrace that. Lance can have the same issue, because as soon as they make a joke like that, now they remember that word. So that's the first thing that I picked out from this based on, I think again, Pastor Jim, I want to give him credit, although he could have been somebody else, so if not, he got credit. But that's something I never thought about as a kid. Like, again, we would help somebody, everyone in here would help, but are we truly going to go above and beyond? And from what I see, that's going above and beyond by checking in with that person, making sure that they're truly okay. Because every one of us will go up to somebody and say, hey, how are you doing today? How's your day going? Are you really being intentional with that conversation, or are you just kind of asking just because that's the norm? So being intentional to me is really embracing that, asking how their day is going, actually meaning that. which I'm one of the worst examples of that, which is why this is kind of a testimony too. I'm not good at that. I'm somebody where there's always something on my mind. My sister knows that, not my brother, my sister. She knows that everything's on my mind, so it's very hard to shut that off and embrace and listen to other people. So it's important that we're intentional with how we approach people or how we talk to people, and that we're selfless. Again, I think that word is extremely powerful, because selfless to me is you're not thinking of yourself, you're thinking of somebody else. So it might be really inconvenient. I mean, it's not hard for us. It's like, hey, it's my day off. I got some time. Sure, I can help you. Instead, it's like, man, hey, no, I got stuff to do, but I need to stop that. This is important. I want to help you. An example of that is I have a really nice neighbor. He gave up a day on a job just to go help me pick up my tractor, which I thought was remarkable. We drove a long ways. That's truly selfless. So I absolutely love that word, and it's again something that I talk about all the time, but I don't always embrace. And that's probably the number one lesson that I would take from that. And again, I just feel like that's true love, true compassion for other people. The second point that I want to make, and this is probably the hardest one, this is where I feel like Reach Church has helped me a little bit, is I think sometimes we think, maybe you're like, I'm pretty intentional, I'm pretty selfless, and I'm sure you can think about people like that in your life, but how many of us think that we do a pretty good job of this, but there's also the skill of listening, observing, watching. And I feel I'm still not very good at that, but that's another lesson that I feel I pulled from the Good Samaritan. It's too easy to do the obvious. Somebody is physically hurt, but are we able to stop and help somebody that's actually emotionally hurt? There is so much hurt, so much suffering in this world. Even recently, there's events going on. Some of them are obvious, and some of them aren't. You have people in the world, they're never going to come in here, or at least not right now. I shouldn't say never. They're not going to come in here right now. They are people that are struggling in life. They're not going to tell you, so we need to listen, we need to watch. It's too obvious in today, or too easy in today's world for us, somebody to make a little comment, we overlook it, we move on, or they're talking about something a little bit, but they're a little bit afraid to really give more to it. So from this, I think sometimes we think we're being a good Samaritan, but are we truly listening and watching for opportunities to go above and beyond for people that are hurting, not physically, but emotionally or mentally? I've noticed people more recently that it might be just a casual conversation, like, yeah, I'm struggling with this, and they make a joke out of it. So in our minds, we might think, oh, it's not a big deal, but that's his way of saying, I'm really hurting, I need some help. You might see it on Facebook. I know Facebook can be really annoying. You might see the same person making the same comment over and over again about something they're struggling with, and in your mind, you're like, oh, I'm kind of sick of that. But that's their way of reaching out. It might be really hard to be that Samaritan and go help them and listen and watch, but that's somebody that's reaching out. It might be somebody that you're talking to at a dollar store. They make one comment about how something's getting a little bit tough. And it's easy to be busy, buy your Skittles, candy for school. Not that I buy candy for school. But it's too easy to walk away. So I think the second, probably the most important thing that I pull from this is being a good listener and watching. In order for us to truly expand the kingdom or to do God's work, and again, it's not about getting people to Reach Church. I don't really care where they go, even if they're not in here. That doesn't really matter to me right now. Because I was in the church. I was in Dighton, like I said. And that's not Dighton, that's me. But I was pretty much worthless there. I wasn't doing anything anyway. I was just sitting there. So I wasn't embracing really anything, apparently, except that one lesson by Jim. So me being there doesn't mean anything. And I'm one that, there's a lot that goes on where I get exhausted. And I'm one of those people that will kind of give my struggles by little comments here and there. So I'm one of those people as well, and I'm sure most of you are too, where we learn how important it is to listen and watch and help those people that are actually in the real world. Because again, they might not ever come here. It might be 10 years from now where they're like, man, I remember talking to that person. I can think of a lot of family members. We were at a family thing yesterday. My Aunt Pam and Aunt Connie stick out to me all the time. Because I know they have their own struggles, but they're always smiling, they're always asking how you're doing, and I didn't realize until like the last few years how that actually made me feel. Or when somebody smiles at you, you instantly feel better. And I've been really selfish at times during that time because I'm focused on my own problems instead of asking them how they're actually doing. They're reaching out to me, and they're struggling probably the same as me. So there's people in our life that all of us listen to and all of us see that have those skills that we can do also. And my hope, my prayer for this church, and really, like I said, every church, is even if you're not in here, that's what we do, that we listen, that we seek, that we watch for people in our real world that are actually struggling, and we don't just walk by them, don't miss out on that opportunity, because we can be a good Samaritan, not by looking at the physical. That stuff's covered. There's always somebody out there that wants to help that. That stuff's fine. And obviously we're going to have our opportunities there, but we need to look for those people that are actually hurting, emotionally, that are not obvious. They're not telling you. It might be a sibling, it might be your family, your cousins, your friends. You're going to start seeing opportunities that you didn't see before. And I'm an example of that because, again, even just starting Rechurch, I didn't do it. Oh my God, I mean, everyone I know, it's not a big deal. But then all of a sudden I started realizing, like, I see people on Facebook in the real world making comments. You see them on the side of the road. There's lots of opportunity where we can be that avenue for them. They might, again, not come to a church for a while. And ultimately, I cannot show them the love and compassion that God can. I don't have that power. And even though the Bible says, and I had it on my phone, so obviously the phone's recording, so I put it in instead. If you look everywhere in the Bible, there's all kinds of things talking about trying to imitate Christ, which is pretty much impossible. But it says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from the love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit, and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Which again goes obviously perfectly with that. And that's pretty much all across the board. I'm not going to be him. I make mistakes. I'm a sinner. I miss out on stuff like this. I can be selfish. But I can be, just like you, we can be the avenue so they can feel that grace. Because there are people hurting really bad out there. We've all been there. And I can't heal them. I can make them maybe feel a little bit better, but they're going to keep coming and asking questions and wanting support and wanting help. All I can do is show them the love, show them that I'm listening, show them that compassion, and hopefully lead them to the one that can actually do that for them and make them feel that way. We have the power to possibly be that person that helps people feel that way and lead them there. So again, it might take 5-10 years. There's a lot of people out there scared to enter a church, and to be honest, that's kind of how I felt too. But we can be that avenue for people that takes them to where they need to be. Again, it could be somewhere else. It could be starting a small group. It could be any of those things. So to make sure I didn't want to miss any of my points here, kind of went off script. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay. So I almost said cousin. My niece Addie. There is a song that has been on my mind. I sent it to you. What is his name? Seth something. No, his name's weird. But anyway, he is a phenomenal singer, and I've pretty much been listening to all his songs recently, but he's got a song out there that is just amazing. And they're super talented, so they were able to practice it and get it done to the point where they're going to actually sing it, and Johnny's making comments on where they're going to actually sing it. So this isn't a song where there'll be words. I want you actually just to listen to the song, because it goes kind of perfectly with what I was trying to explain. So this is kind of part of the message too. But I want you to listen to the words of this song. It's by you want that off, do Good job. So I know I didn't write this down. I'll write that down later. But so the last one I said was listen and watch. I mean, the reason I like that song is it says, I've never known a love like this. And they're not going to know a love like that from us. But we can get them close and feel that from him. That's where we need to get people so they feel what you would feel from that song. Okay? Because again, I can't get people to go there or to feel that way, but God can. And that truly is a love that none of us will feel except for him. So, thanks, Abby. Great job, Johnny. That was like, what, 4 days? 3 days? You don't like late yesterday. But awesome. But yeah, so I'm going to write that word list. I know I didn't talk about my poster there, which is okay. But I'm hoping that today, after this is obviously something I'm pretty passionate about. Again, it's something that has changed a lot for me because that wasn't me. I didn't seek that. And I'm hoping by the end of today, as we go on, that you guys seek those opportunities, that we look to be a good Samaritan by listening and truly help people to get to that love that they have in you. So let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to talk today. Thank you for allowing Johnny and Nicole and Addie and Gracie to come up and help us sing too. Please just help us to seek those opportunities to both be intentional, selfless, listen to others in the world. We know the world is really suffering out there. Help us to be that light that guides these hurting people, not to the church, but to you. I pray that you bless us all as we go on our journeys through that and work through that in our lives and with others. I pray that you help us grow in how we read the Bible and how we process things. And I pray that we just let you guide us through our struggles and everyone else's. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.